I give you something to edit out there, Russ.
Yeah. Coming to you from the subterranean confines of the internationally known Trapdoor Restaurant on Washington Street in wonderful downtown Greenville, South Carolina. I'm Russ Heaps, and welcome to this episode of Big John and Five, where I get my good buddy here, Big John Richards, to pick a beer from one of Trapdoor's taps or cans and bottles, and we sniff it, we sip it, we get bits about it. John tells us a little bit about the brewery. Sometimes we learn a little bit about brewing history, and we get to drink some really good beer. John?
We are drinking Bravik Super Pils, which is actually a pretty well-known brand these days, but again, from a very small is completely wrong, a family-owned, independent Belgian brewery. And these guys, Bravik is probably now their best-known product, but for a lot of years for us beer nerds, it was Petrus. And Petrus was always their aged sour pale, and they do a sour red, and they do all these wood-aged sour products from Petrus. And Bravik was always there, but again, because Pilsner and light beer like this was really the last thing I came to I always said that wheat beer was the last thing I came to because I just didn't like wheat beer, and now I do. And I always liked Pilsner, but for me to really appreciate what Pilsner is and these very light beers and what they are and how magic they can be, I'm still really exploring this world for myself fully, even after 20 years in this business, to find good beers like this.
Right.
And these guys keep Bravik on down here all the time now that it's this available in the United States. And this beer is fantastic. It is such a good, clean, dry, without being bitter Pilsner. It's 5.2%. It's super easy, but still enough to get your attention.
Right.
And it's just a wonderful, wonderful little beer. And they make a point to talk about the brewing process, how it's purely aroma hop. There's no bittering hop addition. It's unpasteurized. It's a completely natural product. So this is still a labor-intensive kind of a Pilsner to brew, but it shows in the flavor and what really happens in there. And it's so fun. It's so bright and crisp and refreshing. Just a little bit of grain texture there, a dry finish without getting bitter, and a little peppery, spicy kind of a finish on the end. Super, super good, and I can't wait for you to taste it. Here we go.
Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Text Miss Lily.
Cheers. My nose is so clean on that. But that grain is a little bit of a cereal grain.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm picking. I'm sitting here trying to figure out what it was, because I do, unlike most American brewed Pilsners,
Yep.
you really don't, often you don't get anything on the nose. There is a nose on this.
And every good Pilsner ought to have a tiny, tiny little whiff of sulfur. And if you give that a little swirl, you'll get that little whiff, the very back end of it's rotten eggs. It's which you wouldn't think that you want in your beer. But that little whiff offsets the sweetness of the grain, offsets that nose enough to dry up your palate. It's just every good Pilsner ought to have that.
Well, thankfully, I'm not getting the rotten egg
And like I said, it is
part
just
of this,
a whiff.
but this is good.
Yeah, and it's so dry on the finish. The grain is so light, and it gives that real. And this is what I used to when I first started drinking good Pilsner. I always called them metallic, but it's not metallic. It's that very, very dry, very thin grain bill that creates that such a light body that it just feels so dry. It comes off almost coppery or metallic.
I'm getting something on the finish that I don't know what it is. that I cannot, nothing that you have said is clicking into what I'm tasting on the finish.
Tasting, so good taste, bad taste, not sure
A
taste?
good taste.
So, I don't know, Russ. I still pick up that cereal grain, and then the hoppy, any hoppy texture, any bitter texture to that beer is coming back on the back end. It's not citrusy. It's more like
Maybe it is.
it's leafy, earthy, kind of
Yeah.
spicy, peppery.
Yeah, it's a kind of a leafy, dirty,
Yeah,
a little bit of a leafy, dirty thing, which doesn't sound particularly appetizing, but it's so light, and it's such a major part of the what I agree is a very dry finish.
Yeah.
That it's noticeable, but and I like it, but I would struggle to pick that out if you hadn't said it.
it's neat. We talk about some of these flavors, and when you bring up that, we're talking about that dirty, earthy finish, that a lot of Belgian beers, because of the Belgian yeast, carry that barnyardy kind of flavor and aroma. And we talk about like horse blankets and wet straw and cut grass and things like that that are not necessarily appetizing flavors. That's not what's in this beer, but the yeast will give it little snaps of that kind of characteristic. And what I often tell people when you're talking about those flavors, they don't sound good. But try to describe the flavor of a mushroom to someone and make it sound good. You can't. There's nothing about a mushroom that sounds good, but it is good. It's delicious. And Russ may disagree with me.
We'll agree to disagree on that. They grow in the dark, number one.
They do.
That's not right. That's not natural. Mushrooms are the antichrist of fungi. There, I've said it. I've said it.
Aren't they all the fungi?
Yeah, but
Well, I
mushrooms are,
suppose there's like, because like yeast is a fungus, so I guess they're not all the fungi. Now that I've started talking to myself about it.
I don't even know what we're talking about here, but that's okay. I'm enjoying the beer,
Right.
and
Again, it's not. We could sit down here, if we were at a tasting panel, we'd probably try and dissect these flavors a little more and come up with what kind of grain we were tasting versus what kind of other grain. But that's not what you're going to do at a bar, and that's probably
Alfalfa.
not what you're here for.
I think it's alfalfa.
Probably alfalfa. This is just that classic sit down, get a pint, and hang out with your friends. Talk about something else. This beer isn't going to command your attention the way another
Right.
different kind of Belgian beer would. It's just built to be consumed.
It's like background music.
Yeah, it's
only
it's
for
just
your
for your palate.
palate.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like it. This is. I wish we had more American brewed pilsners that were like this. Pilsners are really tough to make because there's so little to them, at least the way they're done in this country, that you taste every mistake. If there are mistakes, you taste it.
This would be the same way. This beer's so light, and that's the problem. One of the biggest problems with pilsners is that you can't cover up any flaws.
Right.
If you do something wrong, it's out there for everybody. And two, these beers have to sit and mature. They take longer to ferment. They take longer to mature, so they sit in your tanks for longer periods of time. And American brewers have typically been, we need to get this beer out of the tank and into a bottle so we can sell it to someone. But I think we're moving in that direction, in a better direction.
Wait for this.
Go.
These are lagers. Pilsner's lagers.
Correct.
Hey, there you go.
We won one.
Boy, am I good or what? It's
Yeah.
only taken 5 years, but
On the wagon now.
yeah.
On the canoe.
Got it going. Anything else?
Let's send these people on their way.
All right.
I've blabbered on enough. Kaboom.
So damn lucky. See you next time.